guide, we're going to go on this tour called the Golden Age Taipei Free Walking Tour. Right, so has anybody joined our tours before, hosted by Like It Formosa? Everyone, you were with me last night, yeah? And you have this morning? Yesterday morning. Okay, cool. Right, so basically, Like It Formosa, we're an organization that provides free walking tours in Taiwan. And nowadays, we're not only just in Taipei. If you happen to be traveling to the south of Taiwan, we're also doing free walking tours in Tainan and Kaohsiung. Alright, so the idea of free walking tour is all the way from Europe. Basically, you do not have to pay anything in prior, but it's also running on tips. So at the end of the tour, you can decide what the value of this tour, and tips will be highly, highly appreciated. Especially today is Chinese New Year, and I'm still working. Okay, anyways, so this tour, as I mentioned, is called the Golden Age Tour. So what exactly is the Golden Age? We're referring to the 1920s. Right, the 1920s, the Roaring 20s, it's not only just the Golden Age here in Taiwan, it's also the Golden Age maybe all around the world, because after World War II, the economics were booming, and also culture, all that kind of stuff was growing. So basically, 1920s in Taiwan, it was actually during Japanese colonization. Right, so now I'm going to give you a brief introduction of Taiwanese history. In order to do that, I have to introduce our organization's name. So it's called Like It Formosa. Like it is actually a pun. Like it, it's also going to be the first Taiwanese phrase you're going to learn today. So like it, likey, there's a phrase in Taiwanese called likey. And it sounds very similar. It basically means let's go to. Okay, so let's go to Formosa. Anybody has any idea what Formosa is? Taiwan, exactly, right. So basically what happened is during the 16th century, as we all know, a lot of Europeans, they sailed all over Asia, trying to conquer the world, that kind of stuff. And they found Taiwan, a bunch of Portuguese people, they found Taiwan, and they shouted out Ilha Formosa, which in Portuguese means, what a beautiful island, right? And they just did that and went to Macau. They didn't really occupy Taiwan whatsoever, but they still brought the word back to Europe, which led the Europeans, for example, the Spanish and the Dutch, to come to occupy Taiwan for a couple of decades. However, as you might imagine, two big, strong European countries staying on the same tiny island, that's not going to end well. So basically, the Dutch, they kicked out the Spanish, and then the Spanish, they stayed on the Philippines for a very, very long time. Right. And after that, the big mainland China, right next to us, during the Ming Dynasty, which is the second last imperial dynasty in mainland China, during the Ming Dynasty, they realized, oh, there's an interesting island right next to us, and it's called Formosa, Taiwan, and apparently everybody wants it. So I want it too. Right, so during the Ming Dynasty, 17th century, all the way to the 19th century, we were controlled by mainland China through the Ming and Qing Dynasty, the last two imperial dynasties from mainland China. Right, so that was for like 200, 300 years. And then, towards the end of Qing Dynasty, there was a lot of warfares from all around the world and Qing Dynasty itself. So Qing Dynasty lost pretty much all of the wars, and against one of the wars was between Japanese and Qing Dynasty at 1895. Again, China lost, so they gave Taiwan to Japan. So starting from 1895 all the way till 1945, we went through Japanese colonization. And that's also going to be our main focus for today. Right. So 50 years of Japanese colonization, they brought in a lot of westernization, modernization, and also the stuff that we're going to see today. Right. And after World War II, after 1945, as we all know, Japan lost the war, so they returned Taiwan back to China. However, by the year 1945, the Qing Dynasty, which was the one that gave Taiwan to Japan, is no longer in China anymore. Right? So at that time in mainland China, the government over there is called the Republic of China government, the ROC government. So Japan returned Taiwan to ROC government by the year 1945. However, at the very same time in mainland China, there is a civil war just started. Yeah, the civil war was ROC government against communism. Right. After 4 years civil war, the ROC government lost the war, so they retreated to Taiwan. And then the communists in the mainland China, they grew and became PRC, which nowadays is the publicly known China. It's called People's Republic of China. Right, so ever since 1949, there's two Chinas in the world. And sometimes it might be a little bit difficult to remember who is who, like PRC, ROC, so confusing. So the easiest way to remember is that there are more people on their side. So they're called peoples, Republic of China. And we're just Republic of China over here. Yeah. And so anyways, in short, for our brief introduction of Taiwanese history, we got thousands of years of Aboriginals that have been staying on this island. And then we got some Europeans, some Chinese, and Japanese, and nowadays ROC. Again, Golden Age tour, we're going to focus on the Japanese time of the timeline of Taiwanese history. Okay, so later on during the tour, if you got any questions, feel free to grab me. I'm more than happy to talk with you guys. And this tour is going to last around 2 to 2.5 hours, depending on how fast we're walking. And as some of you might noticed, it's raining right now, so does anybody don't have an umbrella? Okay, maybe later you guys can kind of share. That'd be awesome. Yeah, and also there's gonna be a convenience store on the way, but it's just like probably after the 3rd stop. So, yeah. Okay, and also later on we're gonna enter this. The main focus of this tour is gonna be the Dadoacheng area on Dihua Street. So a couple of days ago, it was like the Lunar New Year festival market. It's pretty chaotic out there, but today I hope it's all cleaned up. Otherwise, it'll be a little bit weird. But anyways, later on during the tour, as I mentioned, any questions, feel free to ask me. And 2 things before we start the tour, you have to know. First of all, Taiwanese people were publicly known to be very, very friendly most of the time. However, we're not friendly when we're behind wheels. So when we're walking, definitely watch out for especially motorcycles or bus drivers, taxi drivers, or just any kind of vehicles. Yeah, I don't want any one of you to get hurt. And second of all, as I mentioned before, it's called the free walking tour, which makes it's a tip-based tour. So later on, tips will be highly appreciated. Okay, any questions so far? Okay. Alright, so for all good, we're going to head on to our first.
Probably some of the origin structure.
So, right now we're at our first stop. This is Beimen. So we all came from the MRT station for the Beimen station, right? And if you look at the metro map in Taipei, you'll realize that there's a lot of stations that end with a Beimen. Right, so this is Beimen, basically it means door or gate. Yeah, so that is a gate. And Bei means door. So this is North Gate. Right. So on the metro map, we also got East Gate, South Gate, and South Gate. But in the real world, we also have a South Gate, but it just doesn't have its own metro station, unfortunately. Yeah. And this Beimen right here is the one and only gate that still preserved its original design all the way from 1884, which is during the Qing Dynasty, very, very late Qing Dynasty. Because very soon after that, 10 years later, the Japanese arrived in 1895, and then they took off all of the walls. So back then, this thing, it was also combined with like walls and everything surrounding Taipei City. So currently we're standing inside of the Taipei Old Town. Yeah, this is the inside of Taipei Old Town. And basically, why did we need a Taipei Old Town in 1884? Is because during that period of time, again, towards the end of Qing Dynasty, there's a lot of warfares, right? And some French people, they decided to bomb Taiwan. Yeah, and it was up until that very moment that the Qing Dynasty realized, oh my god, Taiwan is kind of important, so we have to protect Taipei City, we have to build walls and like stuff like this to protect the city. However, Qing Dynasty, being a dynasty, they care more about the emperor than they care about people. So they're like, okay, we want to protect the city, however, we don't really have the money for it, so I'm gonna ask all rich Taipei people to crowdfund this project. Yeah, so way back then, during 19th century, we already have crowdfunding here in Taiwan. Right, so the walls and gates, it was built at 1884, and then, again, unfortunately, Japanese came, and they look at this town, they're like, huh, this is such a tiny town. I want to make Taipei greater. So what they did is they took down all of the walls. Yeah, so that's why, till this day, you cannot see any single piece of wall surrounding Taipei at all. All of them are being removed. Yeah, and also, at the very same time, the West Gate, which is Ximen. I guess some of you guys may be staying near Ximen area. So Ximen, there used to be a gate right in the middle of the intersection, but it's no longer there because, again, Japanese took it down. However, Ximen, the West Gate, it was actually known to be the most glamorous, beautiful gate because it was located right next to Manga area, which is the most prosperous area where Longshan Temple used to be. So So when the West Gate was taken down, it was like taking down Chinese people pride. Chinese people were very, very unhappy about it. And also, that's our money. Okay. So the Taiwanese locals, they protested against the Japanese government, and the government was like, okay, I heard you, I know you're angry. So they decided to preserve all the other gates. So that's why you can still see the North Gate, East Gate, South Gate, and West Gate. So basically, and then however, that's not the first, that's only the first tragedy that the gates has gone through, the walls were taken away. And the second tragedy that the gates gone through is that, other than this one, all of the gates have been modified into another style after the ROC government relocated to Taiwan in 1949. Yeah, because this one is more like a southern Chinese style, like a little bit spiky and very simple. But when the ROC government came to Taiwan, they only had one objective the whole time, is that they lost the civil war in mainland China, right? So they want to fight back to mainland China. They want to conquer mainland China. They want to win China again. So basically what they did is they modified all the other gates into more of an imperial Chinese, northern Chinese style. Yeah, which is more like a green and gold and all that kind of colorful stuff. Yeah, so if you nowadays go to the presidential hall right across it, that would be the East Gate. That is the current style that they have right now. And this one, for somehow a reason, did not get modified. And the reason is because over there, you can see there are some bridges stretching towards here. And those bridges, they actually, a couple of decades ago, they used to stretch all the way into the middle of the city. So basically, at that time, they knew they were going to have a highway surrounding the North Gate. So they didn't even bother to change the design. So they were like, okay, it's fine. We don't really care about it. So yeah, a couple of years later, the bridge was done. And for the following decades, the North Gate was not really seen by the public. It is like surrounded by the highways. People ignored it and they didn't really care about it. And that changed 5 years ago because our current Taipei City mayor, he decided that he wanted to revive the west part of Taipei City, which is where we're standing right now. The west part, because it's right next to the Dadoacheng River, like right here, because it's right next to the Dadoacheng River, so that's where it all started to develop. And they wanted to try to make this park great again, so that's why he decided to take down the highway within 8 days. And how did he manage to take down a highway? Because this area actually had a lot of traffic, considering it's like right next to Taipei main station, the big red rooftop, that one. Yeah. So how did we do that within 8 days? Because we had Chinese New Year. So during the Lunar New Year, a lot of Taipei people, they go back to their hometown, which is not Taipei. Yeah, so the traffic's relatively low, so they pay the workers extra to take the whole highway down within 8 days. And that whole project was actually so impressive that National Geographic came here to make a documentary out of it. So that was pretty cool. Yeah. Okay, and other than that, we also got other 2 buildings I'd like to share with you right here. So right here, there's a yellowish building. This is the post office. And also in process, we can see on your left-hand side, there is a red and black building that is the train office. Okay, so both of them are actually built during the Japanese colonial age. Those were built by Japanese people. So now you might be a little bit confused. Pillars and all that kind of stuff. So why is it built by Japanese? Because when Japanese arrived in Taiwan by 1895, they have already went through the Meiji Revolution. They have already went through westernization. They learned a lot of western stuff from the Dutch people. So that's why when they got their first colony, which is Taiwan, they feel like they have a big bright canvas. They can do whatever design they want over here. Yeah. So if you see any European-ish kind of building that has a slight touch of Japanese, it's highly possible built by Japanese people 100 years ago. But anyways, now I'd like you guys to take a guess. Which one was built first? The train office or the post office?
The train office. Train.
Good job! Yeah! So that one was built first. Yeah, that one was built in 1919, and that one was built in 1930. So why? Why did you guys vote for that one? It looks older? Okay. Anything else? Okay, that's the only reason. Okay. Right, so yeah, architecture style-wise, that one is built first and that one was built later. And how do we know that this is definitely built during the 30s? Because it has this yellowish, dirty, earthy color. Yeah, and during the 30s, the Japanese people, they knew there was a war coming up. So how did they know there's a war coming up? It's not like they have a fortune teller or a psychic. It's because they were the ones starting the war in Asia. Right. So basically, from the 30s all the way to 1945, they were trying to invade basically everywhere in Asia. They want to expand their territory. So they knew there's a war coming up, and they decided, okay, if there's a war, there's going to be bombing, air raids, and if we built a building, which is a important building in a colorful style or like true colorful, then it might get bombed. So they decided to let it blend into the earth and unseeable. So yeah, that's why the post office has never ever been bombed during World War II. And however, unfortunately, our presidential hall, if you saw it before, big red and white, that one was bombed. And also Xiohai Temple, white, gold, blue, and green, all that, it was bombed too. Yeah, so this is why this is the earth green color, we call it the national defense color. Yeah, so that's why this one is built in the 30s. However, this is actually not the first version of the Taipei Post Office. This is the 2.0 version of Taipei Post Office. The original version, it was built during the Qing Dynasty. It was like wood and bamboos, quite simple. And then later on, when Japanese came, they built it in this color, as I mentioned. That was the second version. What's happened with the point O? The point O is, you see the fourth floor is a little bit different from the rest, right? The fourth floor. So the fourth floor is added up there after the ROC government relocated to Taiwan. Because they feel like we need more space in our post office. So they built a fourth floor. Yeah, so that's post office. And the train office over there, it is currently under construction because they have been abandoned ever since the 90s. Yeah, because the train office, it was there for a while, for a long time. But after the 90s, they decided to move the train officers into the Taipei main station. Because that's where the train actually is at. Yeah. And so nowadays what they're doing is that they're reconstructing inside so that it will reopen as a museum at the end of April. Yeah. So maybe next time you come to visit Taiwan, you'll get to see our brand new museum over there. Yeah. Okay, any questions here around the Beimen area?
Is it still being used?
Yes, this one is still in use. Even though the front, it looks not so great right now, but yeah, it's being used as a post office. It's also one of the biggest post office and it has the longest working hour in Taipei. So during weekdays it worked till 8 or 9, and on weekends it also worked on Saturday mornings. Yeah, so longest working hours. And also for some of you guys, I guess some people, they have specific interest in souvenirs, and this place is also one of the only 5 places in Taipei that you can withdraw 200 NTD bills, which is very rare. Yeah, so if you want to have an interesting, fun souvenir, you can go withdraw 200 or 2,000 NTD.
Does it close during the New Year?
No. At least the ATM machines do. Okay, so if we're all good. So these doors are the original pieces that has been here ever since. Yeah, and those holes that you see, those are not bullet holes. Why? Because when Japanese people were taking over Taipei, they came here without any harming anybody. Why? Because during that time, rich merchants in Taipei City, they knew that Japanese is taking over Taiwan for the Qing Dynasty, right? So they were like, okay, I want to make money, so I don't want anybody to get hurt, so let's just open the gates and let Japanese people in. Yeah, so Japanese came here without shooting anybody. The door would just open and voila, welcome to Taipei. Yeah, so that family, they also got richer during the Japanese colonial age because the government was here, I believe it's because of these metal pieces. It was removed, so that's why it leaves the holes here. But anyways, Taipei has never been shot during the change of dynasty. Okay, and also since we still have time, another thing I like to talk about is you can see there are two roads, and it's because of two different temple theories. So if you look at the metro, if you look at the Taipei Old Town, it's actually the north gate is not pointing. Yeah, it's pointing towards the highest peak up north. The highest peak on the north side of Taipei, which is Qixing Mountain. And so let me think. This road, if you stretch it towards the north, like to there, that's the actual north. But that road is stretching towards the highest peak of north. And basically, the original idea is that they don't actually point north, but another culture master came out and let them know that's not correct. So to place it at the highest peak. Yeah, and later on, we're also going to see other examples of how feng shui has something to do with our culture. And in case you do not know what feng shui is, basically it's a theory about harmonizing people with the environment. Yeah, so certain doors or like windows should be opening or pointing towards one kind of direction. So stuff like that. Okay, we're done there and
You can just take it to any convenience store, up to $1,000.
a couple years ago, actually a couple decades ago, this building was on the ground. The temple was on the ground. Unfortunately, our government, they wanted to punch through this alley over here to meet the road over there. Yeah. So at that time, the government told the temple saying like, hey, we want to have a road, so temple, would you mind moving away? So the owner of the temple is obviously the god, so we have to ask the god for permission, right? So we asked the god inside is called Fazugong. Watch out for the car. We asked Fazugong, are you willing to move away from this location? And Fazugong said no. And then a little bit time later, they asked again, Fazugong, are you willing to move away? And then Fazugong still say no. So now we're in a dilemma. The government wants to punch through this road, however the temple says no. So what they did is they came up with a brilliant idea, is that they asked the god, okay, so if you're not willing to move away from this location, what if we move up? Yeah, if we move up, you're still at the same exact location, right? So, and then finally the god said yes. Yeah, so that's why we basically reconstructed this temple and make it from the second floor up, so that cars can still run through, people can still walk under this temple right here. Yeah. And here in Taiwan, when it comes to temples, it's usually a combination with Taoism and Buddhism. Right. So later on for this tour, we're going to be visiting two temples. This is the first one. And also both of these two temples that we're visiting today are very, very important temples to the Dadoacheng area. Right. So this one, as I mentioned, the main god is Fazugong. So Fazugong, nowadays he's regarded as a god of tea business. Right. So tea business is also the key factor as to why Dadoacheng area became prosperous. So that's why he's like super, super important to the community over here. Right. And later on, when we cross the road and we look back, you'll realize that the front of the temple that's meeting the main road, that's facing the main road, it actually is just a big blank piece of bricks. Yeah. So now you might be a little bit curious, why is the temple facing towards a small alley instead of the main road? It's because, again, feng shui. Right, so according to feng shui, usually we would like our temples to face the south. Yeah, 坐北朝南, facing the south. And not only just temples, but also houses would be preferred to be facing the south. And that's the only reason that feng shui told us, but personally I think for a more scientific reason, because Taiwan, we are in the northern hemisphere, so the sunlight always comes from the south, and it would be better to let the sunlight in from the south. Okay, any questions here regarding him or the temple or anything? Okay. So another thing about this temple is that it's also one of the earliest temples to have elevators inside. Yeah, because here in Taiwan, when it comes to praying, usually the elder generation will come here to pray regularly. For the younger generations, we only go to temples, we only go praying when we need something. We need a good grade, we want a good relationship, we're going traveling, we want health, stuff like that, we want to make money. Yeah. So only elder generations come here regularly, and considering they're the main people who come here, of course we provide them with some elevators, otherwise it would be very difficult for them to run up and down the building all the time.
How old is temple?
This has been reconstructed in 1996. Yeah, so it's relatively young. Okay, we're all good, we're gonna go on. So what exactly is a 228 incident? Basically, in short, it's one of the most strategic incidents that happened in Taiwan in 1947, whereas it's after the Fazugong Temple in Taiwan. Basically, a widow, she was selling illegal cigarettes in this area, in the tea house area. And she got caught, so some officers asked her to turn in all her money and all her illegal stuff. And then soonly after that, it turned into an island-wide protest. Yeah, because at that time in 1947, local Taiwanese, we hate mainlanders. Mainlanders, those are the people who came from mainland China after World War II.
What about now?
Now, we don't specifically hate mainlanders, but mainlanders, they have a little bit, like most mainlanders have a different political idea of Taiwan. Yeah. So, basically that. And after the incident in 1947, as I mentioned, island-wide riot. And then after that, President Chiang Kai-shek, he announced the martial law period, which lasted for 38 years, from 1949 till 1987. The second longest martial law in the world. Basically, under the martial law, you have no freedom of speech, no freedom of gathering. So if we're doing this 50 years ago, we are all being thrown into jail. And basically, we cannot talk about politics. A 228 incident is a taboo. We cannot talk shit about Chiang Kai-shek. We have to honor Chiang Kai-shek, honor Blue Party, that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was basically a starting point of a very, very suppressing time of Taiwan. So that's why we decided to have a monument over here. And in each and every city in Taiwan, there is also definitely a 228 Peace Memorial Park. And if you'd like to check out the Peace Memorial Park, we're gonna visit the Peace Memorial Park on the historic tour. Yeah, so over there they're gonna give you a full story about it, and also every single year at February 28th, which is 228, February 28th, it's a national holiday. Everybody will take a day off, and the president will come out and be like, "Hey, I'm sorry for what happened." So that's that.
Is the park actually called like 228 Memorial Park?
Yes. It's kind of a big park for Taiwanese standard.
Okay.
You'll see. Awesome. Great. Okay, any questions here about 228? The street in front of us, this is called Dihua Street. Dihua Street. So, talking about Dihua Street, Dihua is actually an old town name that originated from mainland China. So why do we have an old town name from China serving as a road name here in Taiwan? Because after World War II, again, the ROC government relocated to Taiwan, and they lost the war against the communists. So the one and only objective that they had back then is they want to fight back to mainland China. How do they remind us to do so is basically what they did is they copy-paste the China map onto Taipei City. Yeah. So currently we're on the northwestern part of Taipei, and Dihua nowadays is known as Xinjiang Urumqi. That place is also at the northern west part of China. Yeah. So according to the road names, you can kind of get the idea of where you are in the city, like the position. Yeah. So that's that. That's why in here we also have like Nanjing Road, Xizang Road, what else? Chongqing Road, that kind of stuff. Those are actually old city names from mainland China that's copy-paste to Taiwan. And so other than that, what about the big known cities that you know from mainland China? So Beijing. Beijing is the capital city of the PRC government. We do not have a Beijing road here in Taiwan. It's not because it's too sensitive, because we use the old name. The old name is called Beiping. Yeah, so we have Beiping Road. And what about Shanghai? Shanghai is a big international city. We do not have a Shanghai road, but we use, again, the old name. It's called Hujiang. So we use Hujiang Road here in Taiwan. And what about Hong Kong? The hot topic for the past half a year. Right, so Hong Kong, unfortunately, we do not have a Hong Kong road because by the year 1947, Hong Kong is still undergoing the British ruling. Yeah, so we do not claim what is not ours. There we go. And other than that, as I mentioned, Dadoacheng area is going to be our main focus. So the Dihua Street is the core of Dadoacheng area, which is the street that we're going to be following for the tour. But Dadoacheng area, this area is actually a place for losers. Right. So, a place for losers. You did not hear that wrong. So how did I dare to say that? Because they actually turned out to be successful losers. Still not better. Okay, so what happened is during the Qing dynasty, which is the longest period of time that anybody has ever controlled us, there's a lot of Chinese immigrants that came from mainland China to Taiwan during the 17th to 19th century. And during that period of time, there are a lot of restrictions on who can come to Taiwan during the Qing dynasty. And only men and single men can come here. Okay. So they cannot bring family, they cannot bring their wives or kids or whatever, only men can come here. So if you know anything about a bunch of dudes hanging out together, is that they like to get into fights. Right. So basically, during the Qing dynasty, there's a lot of gangster fights happening here in Taiwan. Yeah, so in one of the biggest gangster fights in the northern part of Taiwan, it led to the split of Manga area. So as I mentioned before, around the Temple area, that's the Manga area, the first ever developed area in Taipei City. So there was a gangster fight, half of them decided to split with the other half, so the loser party, they came here. Yeah, it's 3 kilometers from the original place to here. Yeah, so they saw this place, they thought, okay, it's nearby the river, let's start a new life over here at Dadoacheng area. Yeah, so at that time they were losers, however, later on they turned out to be more successful than the original area, they became more prosperous than Manga, because a little bit later than that, we started to do trading with foreigners. Yeah, so foreigners originally they went to Manga area to say like, hey, we want to do business, we want to do some trading. But being a successful person, the winning party, they were like, okay, we're so cocky, we don't want to do business with foreigners. I don't care. Yeah, so they got shut down. The foreigners got shut down, and they came to Dadoacheng area. And Dadoacheng area over here, they didn't have anything, right? So they were like, okay, let's do this. So they did trading, they did tea trading, so that's how this whole area became so boomingly prosperous back in the day. Okay, and however, recent decades, it's been regarded more as an old town area, not as prosperous as before. So for a good couple of decades, it was abandoned. Yeah, but recent 2 decades, we decided, okay, we want to revive the west part of Taipei City, so that's why they touched up a lot of the buildings and introduced more interesting stores into the area. Yeah. However, as you can see, it's Lunar New Year, so most of the stuff are not open. Yeah, but there's still a lot of story to talk about in this area, so you'll be fine. Yeah, and so that's the story of the losers. And okay, so Dihua Street basically is divided into 3 sections. The first section is about textile industry. So you might have saw some lace over there at the front of the Dihua Street. And for the second section is about dried goods. Yeah, later we're going to explore that after the break. There's like dried fruits, dried vegetables, dried Chinese herbs, dried fish, dried seaweed, that kind of stuff. And at the end of the road, that's going to be more of a factory area. But nowadays, it's been modified into other purposes. Okay, so for now, any questions about Dihua Street or Dadoacheng?
What did you say was the old name for Shanghai?
Hujiang. Okay, so right now it is 4:08. Let's take a 12-minute break and come back right here at 4:20. 4:20. And if you like to go for 7-Eleven, as you can see, there's a 7-Eleven that we just passed by. And also, you can walk around, take a look.
你知道这里大家都。
Just yesterday, it was completely packed with people because there was a Lunar New Year market. Yeah, so there's like a lot of stands, a lot of stalls occupying the land. And basically what they sell here at the Lunar Market is they sell a lot of snacks. Like cookies and candies and other kind of traditional treats.
And they're closed for how many days, sorry?
They're only open before Lunar New Year. They're open for like 2 weeks or so.
So they won't open again?
They're not open every single day. It's not a year-long thing.
Okay.
Only before Lunar New Year. Yeah. So why do we need so many snacks? Because Chinese New Year, Lunar New Year for us, it's kind of like Christmas. It's when people gather, like friends and family gather around, especially family, and they just sit down and chat and watch TV and also eat a lot of snacks during that period of time. Yeah, and also they sell more like traditional items, like traditional ingredients over here, so that they can make the traditional dishes during Lunar New Year. Right. So yeah, it's also a time where a lot of Taiwanese people gain weight. So very soon after this, you'll see a lot of people rushing into the gym. Okay. So I think we are good. Then we're going to head on to the next temple. A little bit closer so I don't need to shout. Okay. So right now we are in front of the Xiohai City God Temple. So by the name, you guessed it, the main god is the City God. Right. So the City God is right in the middle, for example, the golden one. But actually most of the people that come here, not necessarily here for the City God. Because the most popular god here is actually the god of love. Right. So the god of love right here, he is one of the 2 most famous god of love in Taipei. Yeah. He actually keeps track of how much couples he makes matching every single year. So according to his website, on average, he makes 2,000 couples per year. Oh, yeah. And the highest peak of his career was at 2008. Because 2008, it was, the year the world was crashing down. Everybody was like, financial crisis. Everybody was like, fuck it, let's get married. So that year, he made 6,000 couples. And this is 6, by the way, in Taiwan. Yeah. So, that's what he does here. And he's so famous that he actually went on tour. Yeah, he flew around to get prayed to. Yeah, so he flew to Japan not only once, but actually 3 times. Yeah, he not only just flew in an airplane, he flew in business class. I mean, come on. I never flew in business class. But anyways, he's a god. Yeah, so he's super popular among Taiwanese, but also a lot of foreign travelers who know about him. They also flock over here to pray. Right. And other than that, we also got other gods inside. For example, we got 38 men. Right, so what's up with 38 men? So again, here in Taiwan, when it comes to temples, it's a mixture between Taoism and Buddhism. And the thing about Taoism is that it's a religion that originated from China. And basically, in Taoism, we believe is somebody who was born as a mortal, and if he or she had a heroic past and people honor them after they're dead, then they can become a god. So what happened to the 38 men is that, again, as I mentioned before, there's a gangster fight back then, right? And when the loser party was running towards Dadoacheng area, they somehow forgot to bring their god. So what they did is they brought a group of people to run back into the original place to grab the god and come out. Yeah, so during that process, 38 men died. 38 men sacrificed your life to get the god, the city god over here. So that's why we decided to honor those 38 men for their sacrifice. Yeah, so that's why we got that inside. And also, we got the wife of city god. Because if the city god's here, you gotta bring his wife, right? Right, so, of course, exactly. Right, so usually the city god's wife, she is responsible for the marriage life. So do we have any married here? Yeah, a couple of you guys. So actually, usually the female in the marriage would like to come here to pray towards the wife of city god, because you can pray for a pair of shoes. Yeah, so those shoes, back then we call it 御夫鞋. Basically, it literally means the shoes to control your husband. Right. So what do we do with that? Okay, she didn't hear it now. You might want to find her. Okay, she's back. Okay, so the shoes to control your husband. Basically, what you do is you get it and you bring it back to your house. You keep the toes pointing inwards to your house, so that you make sure your husband will come back home every single night. Yeah. And if you point the shoes outwards, then your husband might not come back ever. Yeah, so that's the idea of that. However, nowadays, because of equality and all that kind of stuff, we no longer call it the shoes to control your husband. We call it the shoes to maintain a happy marriage.
Okay.
So yeah, you can get that from the wife of city god. And other than that, last but not least, we also have Buddha inside. Because, you know, in a relationship, we still need some wisdom, so that's why we got the Buddha inside as well. Alright, so over there you can see there are some candles for you to light up the incense sticks. So incense stick, basically we light it up, it will create this fume. We believe it will bring our message up into the sky and up into the God. And that's a one-way communication towards the God. And other than that, on the right-hand side of those candles, you can see there's a tin jar. tin jar over there. Water dispenser that is actually filled up with blessed tea. Right. So blessed tea, it consists of three kind of ingredients. Those three kind of ingredients are offerings towards the God of love. So it consists of sugar and red dates and goji berries. Yeah. Because we believe the God of love, he has a sweet tooth, so we always bring sweet stuff to him. And Dihua Street right here, it's known again for Chinese herbs. So we put those three ingredients together and the temple will cook it into blessed tea, so that it will share the blessing of the God of love to everybody who's here. So it's also for free. So later on after the tour, if you want to come back here to get some blessing from the God, this temple usually closes by 7. So that's the free blessed tea. Okay, so any questions here about the temple?
These blessings or the...
Those are thank you notes.
Oh, for
Yeah.
for appreciation.
Yeah, the appreciations towards the God. So for example, or like celebrating something, like celebrating Happy New Year or thank you notes towards the God. Yeah. And
You say city god is the god of love?
there are 2 different gods. Just so the most even though the main character is city god,
Yeah.
but the popular one is the one next to it, the God of love.
Okay, within this.
Yeah.
And you have Buddha in there as well. So they share the same temple.
Yeah, Buddhism and Taoism, we don't really draw a fine line between them in Taiwan. They're usually mixed together here.
Where the caretaker would be? The caretaker
The caretaker
temple?
of the temple would be
Governed by...
it's not owned by the government, it's owned by
private.
Miaogong. It's like a person who controls the temple. Yeah, usually he or she may be voted by the community around. Yeah, or they volunteer. Yeah. Okay, we're all good. Now we're gonna go on over there to check out other stores.
별로 가면
Next to the train station, right? The Taipei main station. So all of the goods from the north and the south and everywhere of Taiwan, they come over here to be traded. However, back then, there's no refrigerating system, so the easiest way to preserve food is by drying them. Yeah, so that's why they're like dried goods, all that kind of dried goods over here. And this place in particular, they offer a variety of dried fruits and vegetables. And this one right here, this is my favorite product in the store. It's dry. 这边哦，进来配配看，进来选选看哦。
I saw it. I was wondering what it was.
Yeah, it's kind of meat. So those things right here. And basically what we do with it is it's more of a traditional appetizer. Yeah. We will slice it into very thin pieces and then we'll put it, eat it together with, for example, green onion or apple to lessen the salty taste. Yeah, so this kind of product is kind of more of an expensive product on the Dihua Street. So it's more like a show-off dish. Like showing off like, hey, I'm rich, I can afford this shit. So yeah, that's literal. White stuff, like this pile of them inside. So any idea what those white stuff are? What's it? What is it in English? Okay.
The steam something.
Oh, okay. So those white stuff, those are actually bird nests. So why do we want to eat bird nests? Because we believe that the bird saliva that consists of nests, it has a lot of collagen. So if we consume the collagen, it will make our skin nice and glowing and bouncy. Yeah, so it's for beauty purposes. Yeah, and also that thing is quite expensive, also on the higher end of the market. And what you do is that you put it in some water and it will become this gooey texture, and yeah, that's how you eat it. Very nice.
What is it actually? Like, what is the
Bird saliva.
what's meat just
Just
called bird saliva?
Yeah, in Chinese it's called swallow. It's a kind of bird.
Where do you get that?
We have a farm. Yeah. But back then, we can also see swallows like having nests around the building, but of course we don't eat it because we don't know what's in there. But we have farms that does it. And actually, I think most of them are not really produced in Taiwan anymore. They may came from other SEA areas.
Maybe from the Philippines.
Maybe. Yeah. Compared to the neighbors, this one is super small. Yeah, and this is actually the first ever building made on Dihua Street. Yeah, it was built at 1851. Yeah, the first one ever. Okay, so other than that, this building is also has this Hokkien style building. Okay, so what's Hokkien style? Basically, you can see there are red bricks on top of it, and at the front gate, it is made out of wood. Okay, so actually, you cannot find a single nail or screw that is used for putting together the building. Yeah, so it's all about the smart locks connected to each other, made out of wood. Yeah, so that's actually pretty cool. It's kind of like a Lego house. If you want to tear it down, you can, and you can bring it back up. It's just you have to figure out how to use the smart locks, which is kind of difficult. Yeah, so that's a Hokkien style building we have. And if you look a little bit to your left-hand side to the three-story tall buildings, you can see more like a stone structure and more carvings happening over there. So those are the Baroque style. Okay, so as you can see, it looks a little bit European-ish. So that one was done during the Japanese colonial age, and also a little bit during the Qing Dynasty, because again, the Dadoacheng area where we're standing right now, it became prosperous because of trading with foreigners. So they brought in their style of buildings to have it. And also sometimes you can kind of tell what kind of shop this place used to be, according to the little arts and crafts on top of it. Because the arts and crafts is not only just because it's Westerners, but also it's kind of like a what they use to sell, but later on we're gonna check out other ones, and I'm gonna let you guys take a guess. Sparkly sticks, but it's just for like a little household event. It's not like a huge stick. But anyways, when it comes to temples, from your lower hand side, you can see there's some incense sticks. They come in different kind of length and size and color and sets. And also back there, you can see some paper money, which is golden and stuff like that. There you can see some candles. In the back, those are firecrackers. Yeah, so you'll hear a lot of firecrackers during Lunar New Year, especially tonight at 12 a.m. and also tomorrow, the whole day. So the reason is because tonight is the Chinese New Year Eve. Yeah, so the last day according to the Lunar New Year. We believe at tonight there is gonna be, like back in the day, tonight there's gonna be an animal, a creature. It's called Mian, and it will attack people. So that's why we use firecrackers and red stuff to scare off that creature called Mian. Yeah, so that's that. And also another thing I can talk about is the paper money. Right. So a lot of times when you're in temples, you'll see paper money like this. Yeah, it's like long and golden, and also some portraits of the gods. So this is mainly for the gods. You can see that very commonly in temples. But also we got like smaller versions, also with the golden tint, and every single page there's also a golden tint on it. But of course it's not actual gold because we're not that filthy rich. Yeah. And other than that, we also got another version that is a little bit less commonly seen. That is with the silver one. Alright. So what's up with the silver one? The silver one is used for ghosts. For example, our ancestors. Yeah, they're not gods, right? So we use this for our ancestors, or just ghosts in our funerals. Yeah. So actually, the golden ones and the silver ones, they go into different bins to burn. Yeah, you don't use the same bin to burn. So that's one for ghosts. And other than that, we also got a more fancy one that is like this. Okay, so this one is mainly used in funerals. As you can see, this is a paper lotus. And we believe we have to... the reason why we use paper lotus is because we believe if somebody is dead and heading towards the afterlife, they will pass by a river. And we like our dead family relatives to float through the river by the lotus. And how many exactly do we need? We need to make 108 of these. Yeah, 108 of paper lotuses for one dead person. Yeah, so it takes a long time to have a funeral here in Taiwan. So usually it takes around 7 to 49 days, depending on how traditional we want to do it. Yeah. So what do we do during the 7 days is we all sit down and fold paper. Yeah. I mean, for me, I think it's a very nice experience because, you know, I get to sit down and talk to your family about it, and also mourn over the dead ones in the process, because folding paper really makes you concentrate on one thing, and yeah, I think it's quite meditative to do so. Yeah, but still 108 is a lot. But yeah, so nowadays people are busy, so maybe they don't necessarily fold it themselves. They have factories of people that do that nowadays. But yeah, 108 of paper lotuses. But other than that, we also believe whatever we burn, the afterlife shall receive. So that's also why we have paper cash. Yeah, so we believe our ancestors, for somehow a reason, they also need paper cash in their afterlife. And if they feel like, you know, they don't just want to stay in Taiwan, they also can get some renminbi. Yeah, you can travel to China maybe. And if you want to go more international, we also got like paper American dollars. And other than that, nowadays people also burn paper iPhones, paper iPads, paper Ferraris, paper Maseratis, paper yachts, paper houses, so all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So if you happen to be very crafty with origami, then you'll make a fortune here in the funeral business in Taiwan. Okay, any questions about this temple supply shop? And red and blue happening. This is a very, very traditional kind of bag that we have here in Taiwan. Yeah, so we like to call it the grandma bag. Yeah, because only our grandma had these. Yeah, the reason why grandmas love it is because, again, it's very colorful, and also it's made out of plastic. So it's very durable. If it's dirty, you wash it, you can use it again and again and again and again. Right. So, because this is more like a grandma generation thing, so youngsters here in Taiwan were not really a big fan about it. However, that changed around 2 years ago. Because 2 years ago, Louis Vuitton, fashion world is very hard to understand. So they put this as an element into their spring collection. Right, in their spring show they displayed one of these in their clothes. So ever since the young people in Taiwan, they're like, okay, my grandma bag is very fashionable now. Yeah, so right, basically the original name is called 茄纸袋. So 茄纸袋, this is the, if you want to get some souvenir from Taiwan, this is also a thing you can get. Just a tiny little plastic bag from Taiwan that happened to be in the show of a very high-end fashion industry. Okay. Take a look at this building. So you can see there's some fashion beautiful stuff happening up here. So by the looks of it, we can see on the left-hand side we got some lotus and lizard and pumps and something that looks like coral and an axe, and then some circle stuff and some branches. Any idea what this place is still?
Pharmacy.
Pharmacy! Exactly! It's traditional Chinese medicine. Yeah, because in Chinese medicine we put a lot of stuff inside. Yeah, so yeah, exactly, you got it right. And right now it is still a pharmacy, Chinese pharmacy. And as you can see, they're very good for money. So yeah, that's great. Any questions here? Lucky in Taiwanese it means let's go, exactly, good job. Right. And ama in Taiwanese it means grandmother. Yeah. But somehow in Tagalog it means father. Yeah, I don't know what happened there, but in the Philippines it means father, and in Taiwan it means grandma. Yeah. So anyways, it's a grandma museum. Yeah, grandma museum. What exactly are we doing here about grandmas? We're talking about the women that went through World War II. Right. So again, during World War II, we were still undergoing Japanese colonization. So men, like Taiwanese men at that time, they fought as Japanese soldiers against Chinese people. Yeah. And women, on the other hand, some women, they were sold or tricked into the military to serve as comfort women. Right. So if you haven't heard of the phrase comfort woman before, basically it means military sex slaves. Yeah. And up until this very day, the Japanese government, they're still in denial. They're still being like, well, I don't know, did that happen? I'm not sure, I don't know about that. So yeah, that's why we have this museum right here, trying to show people, to raise a voice, saying like, hey, this did happen, these women do exist, and this is what you did to us back in the day. Right. So it's kind of a depressing place to visit, but still it's very important to acknowledge the dark page of our histories in the past. Right.
Are you still alive?
There are still 3 of them alive. 3 victims that are still alive from that period of time. There are also the only 3 that can maybe see Japanese apologize to us. Yeah. Same in the Philippines. Yeah, exactly. So when during World War II, wherever Japanese people went to, they also did that to those areas. For example, parts of Korea, parts of China, parts of Philippines, parts of Indonesia, Malaysia, and also Singapore and Thailand. So they not only just recruited the comfort women locally, they also shipped the women all around the war scene for their convenience. So that's that. And now that you know about this, you might be a little bit interested about how does Taiwanese people think about Japanese colonization. Right. So Taiwanese people, we went through Japanese colonization from, again, 1895 to 1945, which is 50 years of colonization. And during that period of time, of course, from the start of it, there's a lot of protests against the new government, and people were being executed, imprisoned, and thrown to jail, and disappeared. And also there were some massacres on Aboriginal people in Taiwan. So it was not great from the start. But later on, after the 30s, again, Japanese people, they started to have wars around Asia, right? They wanted to expand their territory. So they feel like if they treated Taiwanese equally as they treated Japanese, no longer treating us as secondary citizens, then we might want to fight for them. We might consider ourselves as Japanese. So from 30s to 45, we were basically being treated quite equally. And also during the colonization, they brought in a lot of westernization, they brought in modernization. They built the railway that actually functions around Taiwan. They also they created the best university in Taiwan, which is NTU, National Taiwan University. And they also taught us how to be hygienic, how to be on time, how to be a modern human being. So yeah, we thank them for all that. So that's basically why we don't really hate them. Yeah. Otherwise, if you compare other places that Japan has colonized in the past, for example, parts of Korea or parts of China, some Koreans or some Chinese might don't like them. Yep. Yeah, some of them don't. And the reason is because for Japanese people, when they're in those two areas, all they did was destruction. They burned houses, they killed people, they didn't do anything good. So yeah, that's basically that. So other than that, that's why I like telling you we don't hate them that much. And other than that, we are still quite close up until nowadays, especially after the 90s where J-pop was like super booming. And a couple of years ago, remember the earthquake, the 311 earthquake, whereas there was a nuclear power plant that exploded in Japan, and it was a very devastating time for them. Right? So being a very concerning neighbor, Taiwan, we actually donated a lot of money, so much that we donated the most in the world. Yeah, and the second was the United States. So it came as a surprise to Japanese people because you see Taiwan is so small and we still have so much love to offer to them. So ever since then, Japanese people, they have been obsessively in love with Taiwan. Yeah, you see a lot of them, like during that period of time, a lot of them, they bear a flag saying I love Taiwan, and they travel to Taiwan, or they just have a flag in Japan, wherever they are. And also, that happened a while ago. And right now, that's why Japanese, they are returning us a favor. They're trying to fight for Taiwan. So what exactly are they fighting for? So this year, 2020, we're going to have the Olympic Games in Tokyo, Japan, right? And being the host, they like to do something for us. They like for Taiwan to join the Olympic Games by the name Taiwan. So why exactly is that even an issue? So actually Taiwan, here, us, we do join the Olympic Games, but we do not join by the name Taiwan. We also, of course, do not join by the name China, because there's the other China right there. So anybody knows what name does Taiwan goes by when it comes to Olympic Games? Chinese Taipei! Good job! We have a neighbor that knows our name. Okay, so yes, we go by the name Chinese Taipei. Yeah. And we've been using this name for 2-3 decades already. And however, we were not Chinese Taipei all the time. Yeah, back then, before the 50s, we were China. Because, before the Civil War, we were the one and only true China in the world. And then later on, during the 60s, the PRC was growing stronger, so they started to knock on the door on the Olympics. So they're like, hey, we also want to participate in the Olympics, and we're from China. So at that time, our then president was like, okay, if you guys want to play the Olympic Games with PRC, then I'm out. So for a year, we were not in the Olympic Games. And then the next term, we were in the Olympic Games, and then Mao was like, no, I don't want to be with, us. So it was back and forth for a couple of times. One time it was us, one time it was them representing China. And then the Olympic Committee, they were like so annoyed, like what's up with these two? So what they did is that they actually wanted to vote on maybe letting Taiwan join by the name Formosa, maybe not. But anyways, they ended up coming up with a compromise name that is called Chinese Taipei. Yeah, because of course we cannot represent China, and if we go out there claiming that we're called Taiwan, then China will think that we're declaring independence, and they're not very happy about that. Yeah. So in their mind, they still think we're a part of them, even though we have our own president, election, healthcare, blah blah blah, military. So yeah. Okay, so nowadays, for the past 2 years, Japan, they've been fighting for us to join by the name Taiwan. However, that did not fly through because a year ago, Taiwanese people, we had a referendum asking the society, do we want to change our name from Chinese Taipei into Taiwan? And 55% of people said no. Yeah, that came as a surprise, but I think the main reason as to why people were on the fence about maybe yes, maybe no, is because if we really go out there and insist on going by the name Taiwan, then we will piss off China. And if we piss off China, they will not let us join the Olympic Games. They will boycott us in any kind of possible reason. Yeah, so we would love our athletes to still have a chance to perform. So that's why we're like, okay, we can still live with this compromise name that we Chinese Taipei. Yeah. However, most of our athletes are not from Taipei. They're like, what about Kaohsiung, Hualien, Tainan, Pingdong, Taichung, Taoyuan? Yeah, so hopefully one day, we can go by our name, but yeah, that's what we're still doing. Okay, any questions between Taiwan and Japan? Okay, if we're all good, we're going to head to our last stop. So this right here, as you can see, is a lantern shop. It's been here for more than 100 years. Wow. Yeah, and I'd like to make a quick stop over here because somebody mentioned that we used to celebrate Chinese New Year for 15 days. Yeah, that's like the most traditional way. The first day is the day where it's New Year and everybody will go to temples and pray. And the second day is, and also the New Year is the day where the family gather. The second day is where people visit the mother side of the family. Yeah. So, and the third day, everybody just chill and do nothing. Just take a rest. Yeah, that's the third day. And for the following days, there's also like different stuff to do according to the days. And the 15th day in particular, that is the Lantern Festival. Yeah. So during early February, there's going to be a lot of Lantern Festival events happening in Taiwan. So mainly in Taipei, you'll see a lot of lanterns, but not only this kind of lantern, but like lantern in animal shape and all that kind of interesting stuff. And also we put like a poem on it to let people guess the riddle, that kind of interesting stuff as well. At the south, there's also an event where people run into firecrackers. Yeah, they light the firecracker up and they run against each other. That's also very fun. It's something I'm planning to do maybe this time. So that's a firecracker thing. And also on the east coast, there's another firecracker event, but not everybody runs into it. Only one person gets bombed by the firecracker. Yeah, so people will throw the firecracker in the air, and the guy will be in the air, like standing on the stool, people will be carrying him, and he will have this branch, you have to like wave, like moving bomb on his face. So that's a way to honor the god, apparently. so Lantern Festival. So if you do manage to stay in Taiwan during that period of time, I think it's a very, very interesting event to see. But if no, there's also other ways of celebrating Lantern Festival all across Asia as well. Okay, last stop over there. So right here, this is officially our last stop. This is the Rice and Shine Shop. Okay. So as I mentioned before, Dihua Street is split into 3 sections. The first section being textile, midway that will be Chinese herbs and dried goods. And right now at the last area, this used to be the factory area. So the factory for drumming rice. Right, so what's drumming rice? Basically, after you harvest the rice, you have to dry it. After you dry the rice, you have to separate the shell from the rice itself. So by drumming it, you'll separate the rice from the shell. Yeah. So among this area, the last part, there's a lot of those factories in the past. But nowadays, after the ROC relocated, they're not there anymore. Yeah. And this shop, the Rice and Shine shop, he's the 5th generation staying on the Dihua Street. However, he wanted to do something a little bit different, so he decided to open up a restaurant that is not open today. But anyways, yeah, that's the Rice and Shine shop. And right here you can also see this beautiful painting. This painting is of course not the original. The original is in the Taipei Fine Arts Museum. And this is done in 1930, exactly that year. And it's depicting the prosperity of Dadoacheng area back in the day. So how do we know this is Dadoacheng? Because right here, this is the temple, the Xiohai City God Temple. So you maybe cannot really tell by the looks of it because today it's covered by canvas and whatnot. But that is the temple that we visited earlier, the one with the God of Love, the city God, that one. And the fumes over here is not a war, it is the paper money and also the incense sticks. Right. And how do we know this is done during the 30s? Because other than Chinese characters, we can also find a couple of hints of Japanese over here. So for example, this one, this is Japanese. That is Japanese. And also down here we can see a lot of women. They're having long braids at the back. So before Japanese people, it was the Qing Dynasty occupying Taiwan, right? And Qing Dynasty people, their signature look is that they have super long black braids on the back. Both men and women. However, the thing about Qing Dynasty and not being modernized is that they live according to the lunar calendar. And according to, that means people only wash their hair when the lunar calendar suggests it's a good day to wash your hair, which is not very often.
Yes, agreed.
And considering Taiwan, it's a relatively hot climate. So when Japanese people arrived in Taiwan, they were like, oh my gosh. Yeah, so they tried to educate us to adopt a more maintainable, hygienic living. So you can see people over there, they have shorter hair. And they put their hair into a bun and wash their hair more regularly. Yeah, so that's the thing. And also right here we can see some portraits of Aboriginal people. How do we know those are Aboriginals in Taiwan? Because you will realize that there's some blue ink on their face, like so. Yeah. And there's been Aboriginals staying on this island for thousands of years. And most of them nowadays, you can only find them in like super high mountainous areas or on the East Coast. Yeah, because, you know, throughout the years, the Westerners and the Chinese, the Japanese, they tried to control the plain area and they push the Aboriginals into the mountains. Yeah, so for Aboriginals, we nowadays have 14 tribes, I think, and 2 of the tribes, they have the tradition of face tattooing. And right now, I think there's only 1 woman left that still has the face tattoo. Yeah. So it's a kind of culture that's disappearing nowadays. Okay. So any questions about the painting or Golden Age tour in general? No? Okay. So later on, if you like to visit the temple closes around 7, and most of the stuff on the street has already closed, so don't bother to go back. And if you like to go for a night market, the nearby night market is called Ningxia Night Market. It's around a 15-minute walk. Basically go down that road and turn left at some point. Just follow Google Maps. Yeah, so Ningxia Night Market. I think most of the night markets should be open throughout the whole Chinese New Year. And for tonight, it might be a little bit difficult for you guys to find food because most of the restaurants, including department stores, will be closed. Yeah, so just try your best, I guess. Yeah, I mean 7-Eleven is always open. Like the slogan is literally called always open 7-Eleven. And yeah, other than that, the metro is also going to be open like regular. It will open till 12. And yeah, basically later on after this tour, if you'd like to go for food, Ningxia Night Market. If you like to take some more pictures, right next to us across the street there is a very Instagrammable place. There's a lot of lanterns and also 10 of the houses connected to each other. It's called Shiliandou. And it's kind of like a compromise between the construction company back there and the committee around this area. They say that if you preserve the front of the buildings, then you can build whatever you want on the back. So yeah, they managed to preserve the beauty of the front. So later you can also take pictures over there. And if you like to go for the MRT station, basically you go down the street, you turn left when you see the bridge, turn left, and then when you So over there you'll see there's a passage that will bring you down. Follow that passage and we'll lead you to the Dadoacheng station. Dadoacheng station on the orange line, which is O12. And other than that, let me have a little promotion time. Okay, so Taipei Free Walking Tour will be hosting the tours every single day, all throughout Lunar New Year. So don't worry, we are still working for all 3 tours. So in the morning, we got the historic tour, which we're going to talk about the history of Taiwan. And in the afternoon, which is the Golden Age, you are already here. And we have the night tour as well. That's going to be the modern tour. And tonight, even though it's a night for gathering friends and family, we still have 1 tour guide that's working. Yeah, so later on, if you'd like to join the night tour, she's going to be there as well. And other than that, we also got some prepaid tours. For example, we got Taipei Free Tour and also Xiohai Tour. Yeah. So if you'd like to learn more information about these 2 tours, you can get the flyers from here. Taipei Food Tour is, I think, it's really nice because you get to try all different kinds of food, and we're going to tell you about like how these food came about, how is Taiwanese food different from Chinese food or like Asian food in general. So that's pretty cool. And Xiohai Tour is also like, I really like this tour as well because Xiohai. Most of you guys definitely put this in your itinerary or gonna check this place out, but for a tourist that goes there, they usually only go for the old street, which sells like souvenirs and some pastries, stuff like that. But for us, what we do is that we bring you beyond that. We bring you into the mountains and check out what made Xiohai today. Yeah. So for example, this place got prosperous because of the gold mining business. We're gonna bring you to a golden ore museum, basically showing you how to refine gold from a rock. So that's pretty cool. And also, yeah, so Xiohai Tour and Food Tour, highly recommended. If you'd like to join these tours, you have to book it online and prior. And there's also a promotion code. It's called I Love Yujin. It's very simple, small caps, no space. I Love Yujin. So you'll get a 50 NTD off if you put that. Yeah, you will.
G-I-N?
Y-U-J. Yeah.
Oh, your name.
Yeah,
Okay.
my
I
name.
love you.
Yeah. So I Love Yujin. If you are going to book the tour, then yeah. So later on, if you got any questions about traveling in Taiwan or Taipei, I'm going to be here for a bit. And if no, then thank you so much for walking with me today, and I hope you have a nice stay in Taiwan.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.
Any questions?